Hi everybody, Joey here again and welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I built my Nano Aquarium. Now what makes this build special is I've decided to let you guys choose what we do with it. It's a 15-gallon acrylic aquarium, 24 inches long, 12 inches wide, 12 inches tall. This is a pretty good-sized aquarium, but in comparison to what I'm used to, it is a nano aquarium to me. Now, I won't be setting this tank up right away because this coming Sunday, I'm starting the Planted Tank series. Now, I know many of you are really excited to see the Planted Tank series, especially myself, because it's the first planted tank I've done in over 10 years. So if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, and that's something you want to see as well, make sure you do. In the meantime, let me show you how I built this nano aquarium. Now you guys will remember the 375-gallon tank build. What you don't know is to build this tank, I bought 4 full sheets of 3/4 inch acrylic. Now that was enough acrylic to build this, but there was a ton of offcuts. Now I've said this a couple times already, but I've been building other tanks with those offcuts, or what's considered scrap acrylic. Around here though, there's no such thing as scrap. So far I built the office aquarium with it, I built the planted aquarium with it, and now the last piece I built the nano aquarium with. You see, to build this I had an 8 by 1 foot sheet left, meaning it was 8 feet long and 1 foot wide. There's not a whole lot you can do with that. However, to maximize that sheet and have no waste left, I could build a 15-gallon aquarium. I started by cutting the acrylic up, using my table saw with a 10-inch 80-tooth carbide tip blade. I needed a front and back piece to start, and they were 24 by 12 each. Then the bottom piece was also 24 by 12. Now the side panels actually go on the inside of the front and back, so we have to take into account the thickness of material we're using. Now because this acrylic panels are sitting on top of the bottom piece, that means that they're going to take up a 3/4 of an inch on either side, a total of 1.5 inches. Now we subtract that 1.5 inches from the 12 inches and we're left with 10.5 inches. So the last two pieces I cut were 12 by 10.5. Then I moved on to edge prep. Now when it comes to acrylic aquariums, the edges are everything. Essentially, you just want to remove any saw marks or inconsistencies with the edges. You want them to be smooth and as perfect as you can get them. Now you can buy a lot of acrylic tools to scrape the edges of acrylic. However, personally, I have always found the back of a hacksaw blade to be the most efficient way to do it. With the edges now prepared, I peeled back the protective paper by about 2 inches. You peel the paper back so the acrylic cement doesn't melt it, and you can see what you're actually doing when you cement it together. However, you leave the rest on to protect the acrylic aquarium from scratches when you're handling it. To cement this together, I lay either the front or the back panel down flat. It doesn't matter which one you start with. Then I take the side panel and put it on top of that. Now in the past video I showed you my plywood forms that I made that holds the acrylic panels up straight and square. Then I put my clamps in place. Now these don't squeeze the acrylic together, they're simply there waiting for me to do so. Really, they're just hanging there on the acrylic. Now we've gone over the different methods of cementing acrylic, but for 3/4 inch acrylic I use the pin method. Now the pin method is exactly what it sounds like. You take some really thin pins and you place it underneath the acrylic. Then you inject some Weldon 4, which is acrylic cement, and you allow it to sit there for about 60 seconds. During this time, the Weldon 4 is going to soften the acrylic up to the point that when you pull the pins, the acrylic fuses together on a molecular level. Then you apply pressure to the clamps until the seam runs clear. Now you will squeeze out a bit of the softened acrylic, but this is a good thing. You can always remove it later, however it's a sign that you made a good seam. You repeat this step for both sides. Now usually I would tell you to wait 24 hours when using the pin method, but for such a small tank it's really easy to move around, so you're not going to be stressing the seams as much. And that's why you typically wait 24 hours. However, with this I'd wait 45 minutes to an hour. Then repeat it with the other side. Now it gets a little bit more tricky because you have to do 2 sides at once. Get the other front or back panel, lay it down flat, and flip what you've already built up on top of it. Now to prevent the top panel from bowing in while you're cementing it or having the sides kick out, get a piece of wood or plywood cut to the size of the side panels and place it in the middle. This will be your support system temporarily. Again, repeat the steps. Put in some pins every 12 inches, inject the cement, wait 60 seconds, pull the pins, and apply pressure to the clamps. Only this time, because we're doing 2 sides, it's best to prop the aquarium up on some wood blocks so you can get your clamps in on either side. Now we wait another hour. Finally, we move on to the bottom panel. Now if everything else is square on the tank, the bottom panel is the easiest. Put the bottom panel down on the blocks, flip the tank up onto it, Place the pins in every 12 inches, have the clamps ready, and then inject your cement all the way around. You want to make sure you inject the cement around the entire aquarium before you start pulling those pins. But you gotta move fast because 60 seconds goes really fast when you're trying to do the entire perimeter of an aquarium. Then once again, pull the pins, apply pressure to the clamps, and wait. Now this size aquarium you can get done in a day. Obviously there's waiting times in between, but after you get it done that day, you can fill it up with water the next. Now if you have a lot of woodworking tools like table saws and routers, my suggestion is to take advantage of them. You see, when it comes to acrylic, you can use most of the same tools you use on wood as you can on acrylic. So what that means to me is that when I'm building an acrylic aquarium, I try to prevent mistakes before they happen. So a lot of the times, I won't build the aquarium to its exact dimensions. A lot of the times, the bottom panel will be slightly bigger, and the side panels will be slightly longer, meaning that there's a little overhang everywhere, which gives me a bit of a safety buffer when putting the tank together. It simply ensures that the seams line up perfectly, and I make them line up perfectly with my router later on by routing off all of that excess. Now we have to move on to polishing. If you don't polish the edges of an acrylic aquarium, they will remain matted, and you can't see through them. In my opinion, it looks horrible. So I get myself some Novus 2 and Novus 3. This is a fine and heavy scratch removal. Now you really only need Novus 2 because if you sand the edges of the acrylic with some really fine sandpaper first, it does the same thing that Novus 3 is going to do. The way this stuff works is you get a buffing wheel on an electric drill, add a little bit of the scratch removal to the surface, and then simply buff it out. You'll notice that within seconds, the seam becomes crystal clear. The downside to this stuff is that it makes a really big mess. Or maybe I'm just messy, but I splatter it everywhere. So not only do I have to clean myself up afterwards, I have to clean the tank as well. But if you do splatter it, it just wipes right off. Finally, with all of the edges polished, you can go ahead and remove that protective paper. So now I need your help. What are we gonna do with this thing? I have two ideas. One, I turn it into a nano planted aquarium, or two, we transfer the fry from the shell-dwelling office aquarium to this and potentially start a whole new little colony inside this tank. So I'm going to let you guys vote. You have two ways to do it. There's going to be a pop-up that appears right now. You can either click planted tank, shell dweller tank, or other. If you have an idea for something else, click other and leave the comment in the comment section below. Now in the coming weeks, the Planted Tank series is going to be going on, and I'll consider all your votes for this tank in the meantime. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I also wanted to thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next Sunday for the Planted Tank series.